Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you might be. I'm all alone today. Y'all are stuck with me until Christos comes later. If he comes later, I don't know. He's presenting at the M365 conference in Chicago today. And it just so happened that it conflicted with our time. So he's not going to come. He might come later. But yeah, so good morning. Happy time zone, everybody. Glad to be here. I was going to try to get his session up, but it's on Teams. So I decided that might not be the best. That might not be the best idea. So anyway, good morning. I'm glad everybody's here. Good to see everybody. Hi, Cavo Cathedral, like a cathedral? Maybe? I don't know. Morning, Rocket Band. Good afternoon. Glad to see you people back here. So, Gruff TNT. Good morning. Good afternoon. We're gonna dive back into some. Secret rotators today. I did a little bit of research this week, and I don't have great news. So we're gonna have to be a little creative with how we do it. It maybe creative is the wrong word. We're just gonna have to do a lot more work, which I think it's kind of okay. So one thing I do need to do, so we can actually get going here, is to make sure that I've got the right screen up, because right now I don't have the right screen. There we go. So if you were with us earlier, we were working on a secret rotator. And we talk about secrets, we talk about certificates a lot, of course, in identity, because that's how we have to authenticate our apps. Hey, Polowski. Good morning. Thanks for joining. We did some secret stuff. We've been messing with secrets and certificates and all sorts of fun stuff the past few weeks. And one of the things that comes up all the time is when we talk about building apps and we talk about registering apps and all this sort of stuff in Azure AD, we end up in a place where we always say, oh, well, you go to your app registration and you go create one, you pick one, and you come and create a secret, right? And what we always say, of course, whenever we're doing this, is we're like, oh, well, just go create a new string secret because it's easier. It's simpler, especially for the purposes of showing people and for getting into it and whatever. So we always say, hey, you should go show your client secret. Or you should always go create a client secret, which is essentially a password for your app. Not greatest in terms of security, nor in terms of maintenance, because you'll notice all these expire later on this year, which means that on 12.2 and then again on 12.3, I'm going to have to remember, oh no, my app is running, I got to come and rotate these secrets. And that's just it's just a pain. Things like managed identity make that easier if you're running in Azure, but what if you're not running in Azure? Or what if you're doing something where managed identity doesn't really work, right? Where managed identity isn't appropriate, we'll say. And so we did some work earlier this week on making certificates work instead, which certificates largely are fairly straightforward in terms of the code that you have to write. It's just the managing and the manipulation of these certificates that you have to deal with. Do you have a CA at the place that you work that's going to issue these certificates? Or are you going to do self-signed ones? Because then you've got the maintenance of, okay, well, my self-signed certificate's going to expire in 3 days. How do I get notified of that? Or how do I know that that's about to happen? If you've got a CA at work, like a certificate authority at work, might be a little bit easier just by virtue of the fact that somebody's probably managing that certificate authority, and somebody probably knows, oh, hey, this certificate's about to expire. So we looked at doing some certificate stuff, and of course the certificate stuff in .NET, we had some code that was using certificates, and of course in .NET there's a little bit of a cross-platform issue there with opening certificates from different stores, because essentially Windows has this concept of a certificate store. You can go to certmgr.msc and you can see your certificates. You can see all the certificates that are in your, I know that's small, but you can see all the certificates that you've got available to you either on the local machine or for your current user or whatever. And those are all stored in a special place. And there's .NET. .NET has a bunch of interop to go grab those certs and find them by name or by thumbprint or, whatever. So you do all sorts of cool stuff with Windows, but in Linux and Mac, there's really, so far as I could tell from all the research I've been doing over this week, so far as I can tell, there's not really a similar concept. Like, there's not really like a central sort of abstracted store. Different distros put them in different places. Different people may use them for different reasons. Some might put them in the user's file system somewhere. Other people put them in like Etsy SSL. And then on Mac, it's a totally different place. But it's similar to Linux in the sense that there's not really a central store except for Keystore. But it's not, or keychain, but it's not, where you can put them on the file system could really be, it's kind of up to you. So we got some code, which we'll share a link out to. And that code is essentially a first pass at like this sort of cross-platform certificate thing, where if you're going to use Etsy SSL, or if you're going to use, I want to say it was like in the system root in Mac OS X, or if you're using Windows, all you do is give us some config and we'll go and deal with finding the certificate in the right place depending on your environment. So we'll get that code shared out today. It's definitely sort of a, we'll call it a first pass, right? So if you'd like to contribute to it, of course, we're always happy for contributions. But in fact, it's over here in 45 Show, and in our 45 Show organization, where we got a bunch of different code and things like that. And or actually, it might not be here yet. It might still be in mine. Maybe I haven't forked it over here yet. But we'll get a link out to it, so folks who want to go and take a look can take a look. But at the end of the day, the whole point was we're going to have a certificate, and that certificate could live in a variety of different places. And so now this repo has the .NET generic host in it, and that .NET generic host is the thing that goes and it's just calling the graph right now, but it deals with all the work of where is this thing, right? Where is this certificate, so that we can go open it up and use that for our credential. At any rate, though, these secrets are all going to expire. And because all the secrets are going to expire at some point, we have to figure out a way to rotate them. Or we have to figure out a way to maybe ping the owner and say, hey, owner, do you still need this certificate? Like, do you still need this secret? Do you even still use this app? So the net is we got to find the secrets that are expiring and notify people to say, hey, this is going to happen. And then maybe even generating new certificates. Or new secrets for the user, and then updating the corresponding Azure app maybe, but that's a little bit further down the road. So this week I've been digging into the Graph a bunch, and of course Microsoft Graph is that's sort of our primary API entry point for things like Azure AD and Microsoft 365 and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to access somebody's mailbox, you want to access somebody's calendar, whatever, you can get that through the Graph. So like this is my mailbox, for example. So in the Graph, we got this thing, we got an entity called an application. And the application is that's sort of like the root item in Azure AD, that when we create an app registration, this is what we get, right? In the API, this is what we're going to see. So if I look at this one over here, all the things like what's my redirect URL, can I use implicit, what kind of directory they're in, all of those things ultimately end up in what's called the app's manifest, which is just a big JSON file that has all these settings in it. This manifest is very, very close to what you'll see in Graph. So I'm just going to go pull this app's ID. So we'll go take a look at these two together. So like, if I come here, put my Graph over here. If we come and look at the specific application, right, and look at what we get for it, a lot of the data that's in here, and it's a little different. It's not like a one-to-one, but it's very, very close. But if we look at the data that's in the response, it's very similar to what is in your manifest, which in some ways is good because it means you can pretty easily take a look at a manifest and say, oh, this might be a field that I need to tweak, or I changed this field in the UI, and then this is the field that I need to go change over here. And so there are two things on this that we're really interested in for today. Password credentials, that's one of them. and the other one is key credentials, which starts with a K, so it's going to be up higher somewhere in here. Key credentials. Key credentials are certificates. Password credentials are passwords or client secrets, essentially. And if we look in here, in our object in the graph, you'll see we've got the same key credentials and password credentials. So we have both of those available here. Sadly, and this is the part that really I'm not super excited about, and this is why we're going to have to do a bunch of extra work. For apps that don't have these, we can't query, we can't do a graph filter, is what it comes down to. So what we looked at doing earlier, which would make this essentially so simple that we wouldn't have even had to do a show about it, we could just release a code snippet and be done. The problem is if we want to do a filter, so if I was to say do a filter on the applications object, say I want to filter on key credentials any, which essentially says give me any applications that have anything in that key credential array, because this is just OData. If we run this, complex query on property key credentials is not supported. So, can't do it. So we can't do that, which means we also can't do things like, hey, let's do a query on expiring key credentials in the array. Can't do that either. So, of course, it doesn't work for password credentials either. So then my next thought was, well, why don't we use graph change feed? Or graph delta query even. So change feed doesn't support application objects yet, so we can't use change feed. Change feed and graph is a way to say, hey, when something changes, when a certain type of object changes, ping this webhook, like ping this URL, right? It's available for stuff like users and mailboxes and calendars, which is really cool because you could build an app that every time somebody got a new email message, this app gets a ping that says, hey, user X just got a new email address or email message. Here's the ID. Go do something with it. Parse it to see if they're accidentally, sharing their social security number with some random person on the internet. Whatever. Archive it off to some other mailbox. Do some analysis on it to, whatever. So webhooks are really cool, but unfortunately they're not lit up yet for applications. So application objects change, we can't get a change notification. So then I thought, well, let's use Delta Query, and Delta Query is super, super cool. With Delta Query, essentially we say, hey, we're going to issue this request. So let's issue a request. So we've got like select, I'm just going to select key credentials, we'll select password credentials, and we'll select the app ID, the ID, and the display name. So we're going to select these fields just to keep the response kind of small, right? So we do this, and we get the things. We get app ID, we get display name, key credentials, password credentials, and that's it, which is nice because this way we have a shorter, smaller payload, right? Smaller is always better in API cases anyway. So, and this even has a next link because there's going to be more after this. But what we can do is we can add /delta to the end of this. And now when we run this query, we'll get our next page. We'll go over to our next page. And then we get this new property up here, this OData delta link. And the OData delta link is just that. It's a link that we use from here on out. So we say, hey, let's take this link. We're going to take this and we're going to say, hey, whenever we get a change on on an application object, I want you to send me the same thing, right? So I'm going to copy this. We're just going to paste it up here just so we can see it. Get rid of this quotation at the end. So we take this delta query, and it has something called a delta token in it. And that delta token is the thing that says, hey, essentially it's a state pointer to say, hey, take me back to that other thing that I did. So if we run this, nothing's changed since we ran our initial query, so our value is empty, right? If we came to Azure AD and we did something like creating a new application registration, I'll create a new one here. We'll call this Delta. Caps are on. Oh my God, they're still on. Graph Delta Test. We'll create a new app in here, so we'll register that. And now, so we got a new app. And now, if we run this again, we see our new app. And we only see our new app. Which is kind of cool because now I don't have to say query the entire stack to go and get all the stuff, right? The problem is, if I come to an existing application. So let's say I came to say, I'm just going to pick one at random. Let's just use we'll use API because I have no idea what that is. And the secret's already expired, so it doesn't matter if I create a new one. So this is an app that already exists. And if I come here, oops, we'll go back to API. If I come here and try to add a secret, you would think, since that's an update, that it would trigger this, that it would trigger a Delta query, right? Or that it would show up in Delta query. So, Delta me. So I'm going to add a new secret. So that updates the app. I mean, in order for us to add a secret through Graph, we literally patch the application object, right? Sadly, when we run this query again, even though we've modified that app registration, sadly, it never appears here. Now, I've talked to the team and mentioned it, and people are going to get back to me and whatever, but it's kind of a bummer because my hope was that if nothing else, that this would work. Because we're updating an entity, so surely Delta would fire on that. And alas, it does not. So it leaves us in a bit of a weird spot where we don't have, our Delta isn't working, change feed isn't available for apps yet, and we can't query the key or password credentials directly. So we're going to have to do it ourselves. Which means we're going to have to go and pull the whole collection at least once. Pull the whole collection, parse it, figure out what apps are expiring, send notifications, and then do it all again the next day or 12 hours later or whatever our schedule is going to be. And that kind of sucks. But my thought was, instead of querying this every single time, what we could do, we do a one-time query and we store that data somewhere, right? We do a one-time query, persist the full application list, essentially, which gives us something that we can look at and iterate on later on. And then we will get updates for new apps. We'll get new apps via Delta query. So because we see when somebody creates a new application, we can at least know, hey, this is a new app that we need to add, and then we can go pull that app's information and go take a look at it. We'll still probably end up in a place where we have to do like an ongoing, like if we do these Delta syncs in the middle, I think we'll still have to ultimately do like a full pull at some point, you know what I mean? It kind of sucks. But, hi Mohan Ranjank. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Glad you're here over on Microsoft Developer. So that's what we're going to do today. Is I'm going to work at least at the beginning, and work on pulling in the entirety of this and persisting it somewhere. Now, I've got a relatively small directory, so my directory only has like a few hundred apps in it. So this should be relatively quick. Sadly, if you've got like an enormous directory, that that initial pull, that full pull might take. I mean, that might take an age, right? I don't think it's not going to be super clean, but it's at least a start, so that when we get to the point where we have things like Delta query available, when we have change feed notifications available, when all that sort of stuff happens, we'll be at least in a little bit of a better position to tweak from there. So we'll have to do a lot of work up front, and then we'll tumble down the stairs to less work as the stairs get built. And speaking of stairs, I still have people here at my house working on carpeting upstairs, so hopefully it doesn't get too loud. It was pretty loud yesterday, but I think they're mostly done, so apologies in advance. One more, announcement, before we get going. Please come and join us on Discord. It's Bang Discord in the chat if you're on the 45 show. Of course, we talk about stuff like this and all sorts of other things. There's a great conversation yesterday about revertables. About yes, Rocket Man, they did. So after Tuesday, he came back Wednesday and he had a full crew, like four people, and they got like a ton of work done Wednesday. And then yesterday they were working on the stairs, and apparently carpet on stairs is like a huge pain. So that part, I guess, takes like a lot longer. Like you could do like a whole room or 2 or 3 rooms in the time it takes somebody to do like just one set of stairs. So it sounds like the stairs are pretty awful. And that's what they're working on today. So yeah, his help finally showed up. Tuesday, the poor guy shows up, and he's like, well, I'm not sure where the rest of my crew is. And we're like, well, he's like, I guess they're not coming to work today. That seems pretty, that seems like a nice way to just, I don't feel like going to work today. Not going to do it. I'll just skip. I'm just going to leave the other guys that I've got waiting on me to do work for them. I'm just going to leave them in the lurch. Who cares? It just seems very strange. But, yeah. And then one other thing, I guess. So if you were hanging out with us when we were at Build, we sort of kicked off a series. We're going to have this series throughout June. Every Monday from June 7th, which is next Monday. Every Monday from June 7th until July 12th, skipping July 5th because it's the day after holiday in the U.S., we're going to be doing a series on Learn TV all about getting started with identity. And so it follows the Learn TV format. So we're going to go through a Learn module with you, and we can all work on it together. So we're going to go through this Learn module together and Learn Path, because there are 5 different learning modules, and we're going to go through all of them. So, hey, Avogadro, SG1, no sweat. We're glad you're here. We're working on our secret rotator again today, and because of some graph limitations, we're going to have to be a little brutish about it today. So we're going to have to. We're essentially going to be doing. We're gonna tax the graph API a bit today. You can pull a bunch of data and store it somewhere, and then figure out what we're gonna do for Delta updates. I mean, worst case, of course, we could always just run it again and just do full pulls every day or something. But that just seems really too brutish. So anyway, but make sure you come hang out with us on Discord. Lots of cool conversation yesterday. Robertables, who is probably well known to a lot of Twitch folks. Robertables was learning Azure Functions and doing some stuff in Node. And then there's a question over here. Yeah, sure, I can share the link to the identity show. Yeah, I'll put it up. I'll put it down here in the chat. It's aka.ms/learn-implement-identity. And that's sort of the landing page with links to all 5 of the episodes. Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. So, anyway, let's get in and write some code. So, this was our timer trigger from the last one. This was our every 5-minute timer trigger. And we've got our graph service client. That's our thing that goes and calls graph. And sadly, we don't have a filter we can put in here. We really don't have a whole lot we can put in here. And so because of that, we're basically going to have to do our full one. So I'm going to write that method. And then we'll probably have to abstract some of this away and pull it out, because we're going to do this in a function, but you may want to do it. I mean, you could do this in something like a web job if you've already got app service running somewhere. You could do it in a console app that's running locally, a scheduled task, a cron job, whatever. Lots and lots of different ways to do it. And so we probably want to put that logic somewhere not directly in the function, and just let the function handle things like, when should I call this, and what kind of connections we're going to have. So the first question will be, where do we want to store this data? Personally, I'm a big fan of Azure Table Storage. And the reason is because Azure Table Storage is super cheap, it's super fast, and it's fairly ubiquitous. Easy to use. The SDK story is a little bit of a mess right now, but it's relatively easy to use. Functions has cool bindings, which is a little bit less code that we have to write. And there's an emulator. So I'm going to run the emulator locally so that we can test it out. But it's cool. If you are designing your queries in a way, or if you design your tables in a way that you want to build a key, or you want to use keys that you can derive from data, right? So like, the fastest thing you can do in table storage is a retrieval. And a retrieval is a combination of the partition key and the row key. And those are like super, super fast. Yeah, totally H3 Tech. I love table storage. It is one of my favorites. It is so cheap that it's free. Like, it is unbelievably cheap and unbelievably fast. If the queries are if your data is made for that kind of flatness, it's super, super, super good. So your key, the key design is all about the partition key and the row key. The partition key is a logical partition. I mean, how it gets broken up physically is up to the service, and so you don't really have a whole lot of control over that. But what you say is, I have logical partitions in my data like this, and I want these logical partitions to be broken up on this key. And so our partition key should be some data with decent entropy, but also data that's relatively well distributed. So a lot of times you see partition keys that are time-based, especially with stuff like logs, because your logging generally is the same over a period of time. So like the logs I might capture in 24 hours are probably going to be relatively close to the same volume when I'm in like a normal operating state, right? And so, of course, not all apps are like that, because some apps like, you know, the NFL streaming app are probably super, super busy on Sundays and not really busy the rest of the weeks. That might not work, but retrievals are the fastest. Partition retrievals are also super fast because you're just saying, give me everything in this single partition. What we want to avoid at all costs is a cross-partition query, where we say, I've got multiple partition keys and I want to query some arbitrary thing on some arbitrary column on our table. We don't want to do that because that's the slowest and the most expensive in terms of time, right? Fuel says, I have the idea that all log functions shouldn't take strings, but rather formatable string. That way I can log dates with invariant culture rather than random culture. Why is it random culture? Is retrieval faster than writing? To me, it should be the other way around. You know, that's a good point. I've never thought about that, though. Because I have to say, in the bulk of cases where I've used table storage, my writes are essentially fire and forget. I fire it and trust that it's been written. I don't go back and immediately repull. I don't do like a write retrieve to check to make sure that it was persisted, because table storage tells me that it's persisted, so I trust it. But I have not checked to see if retrieval is faster than writing. That would be an interesting thing. Part of it's going to depend too on the size of the entity. But so I'm going to use table storage because I like table storage. But if somebody has an opinion that I should use something else, that's fine. Cosmos databases also have the same table API is also in Cosmos DB, and Cosmos has better indexing across the table. And so things like a cross-partition query or querying on a non-indexed column are much faster, but of course you pay for Cosmos. Now, Cosmos had some announcements, and Christos isn't here, so I can't ask him what they are, but Cosmos had some announcements at Build this year, and I think they've got like a serverless tier now where you just kind of pay as you go, which is kind of cool. But I haven't looked at it yet. But, you know, if that's the case, if it still ends up being pretty cheap, I might have to switch to Cosmos instead of table storage. But I don't know. I've used Azure now this is my 10th year of building apps in Azure, and every time I try to stop using table storage, I just keep coming back to it. I mean, I don't know. It's always been there. It's like a warm blanket. Fuel. I am using limited CPU caching knowledge on cloud. On a CPU, writes are fast because they're always cacheable, but reads can be cache misses, which is super expensive. This is very true. I think the advantage of cloud, in a way, is that some of those style problems are left to the provider. Because if the provider doesn't give you a guarantee if the provider gives you a guarantee on anything, how they get there is largely up to them. And that's why you see in so many cases, providers don't say, this is how we do. This is the service we're going to deliver to you, and it's going to meet these things, and it's going to happen in this order. And if you don't meet this, then we'll give you back the money you spent on those 2 requests. So here's your 17 fractions of a penny, right? because it gives them the freedom to figure out, to do the hard problems of, well, how do I, right? Like, how do I put data back in? Or how do we store and distribute this data across multiple data centers in a way that a customer isn't going to notice and that the customer's latency requirements will be met? So I think it's kind of cool, because like, I'm not a very good programmer at all. I mean, all of you have seen my code for a year, so you should all know I'm not a very good programmer. And yet somehow we can still write software that's usable and functional and, you know, not too bad. And it's because all of the like super smart big brain folks are off building these services that abstract so much of that complexity away, that it makes it their problem, right? I think that's why I like it, because I can focus on the problem I need to solve, which is, how do I get notified when my secret's about to expire, instead of focusing on the ultimate like storage mechanism, how we're going to write to the page to make sure that it comes back out as fast as possible. And I just don't have to sweat it, which is, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, it's good to know about it, but I don't think it's like it used to be, where you really had to know that kind of stuff to write super reliable software, I guess. A lot of the reliability is baked in by virtue of the services that you use, and of course that's where the money comes in, is you pay for the service and you're paying for everybody's engineering time. You figured that out, but it's commodity too. Like, if I'm building business apps, do I want to be like the absolute best memory pager for SQL? Probably not, because I'm building an app that makes my business run really, really well, not being an amazing memory manager. But there are people that disagree too. And I'm not saying that those skills aren't super, super useful, because I think you write even better software when you understand exactly what's happening all the way down to the hardware. But in some cases, like in a lot of cloud cases, we don't necessarily know what's happening all the way down the hardware, because the providers don't tell you, because they could change it at any time. And they don't want the conversation to be, well, you told us that you were going to only write to a 4K page, right? That's the only thing you told us. So we wrote all of our code around a 4K page size, and now you're changing to a 2K page size. Now my database doesn't work. And I use that as an example because that's happened. We had somebody like absolutely rake us over the coals and take us to task about page sizes. And it's sort of like, I don't know. I don't want to be a page size expert. I don't want to be like a storage expert to know exactly the best way to store the bits in just the right order. Like, since some people are really into that and really know it well, and that's awesome, and I'm glad that they work at places like Microsoft and Amazon and Google so that they can figure that out, and then we can all reap the benefit of what they do. Like H3 Tech says, it's a force multiplier. You know, do you want to have the best data center people on staff, the best rack managing people on staff, or just let, it's commodity? Now, there's an extreme to that, however, I will say before we go on. There is an opposite to that, or an opposite extreme. I did go to a customer a long time ago. Everybody in there and they're a tobacco company, so everybody was smoking, which, to see people smoking in an office building is extremely weird. I'm just going to throw that out there. Everybody was older, probably like 50s plus, right? And we were like, I worked for a consulting firm, so we were helping them figure out some cloud stuff they had to do. And I remember they said, we don't hire for technical talent at all. We don't hire technical skills. We hire business people who understand our business, and then we outsource all the technical stuff. So they hired people like us, they hired the consulting firms to have the technical talent. And that extreme doesn't really work very well either, because you end up in a place where nobody understands the stack and nothing works together, because everything was this little siloed project that was sent off to another place, and nothing works, Fuel says he's got some folks at his work that are COBOL guys, 70 plus. A buddy of mine has a friend of his who's COBOL. She's in her 70s and makes a ton of money, an absolute killing, doing COBOL code, because there just aren't as many people who know it, which is pretty awesome. Okay, And if you're working on anything cool, though, tell me. Like, anything that you're working on that's really neat or interesting, please, please, please come and tell us, because we always like to hear what kind of cool stuff people are doing. So I'll put the Discord link again in here in the thing, so you folks can go out and hang out in Discord, and we can help Robertables with his Alexa to Azure Functions node project, which is really cool. Okay. So we're going to use Table Store. I'm going to use Table Store to store in here, or to store our data here. And we'll just essentially store as much of the manifest as we feel is relevant, which, based on what we're pulling right now, is the ID, the key credentials object, the password credentials object, and the app display name. If we look at the, we may also want to pull the app owner, although I'm not sure if the app owner is in here. Online marriage ceremonies. Interesting, Rocket Man. How does that work? Is that happening in America? Are you doing that here? That's actually really interesting. If I was to get married again now, I don't know, doing it online may have been a lot easier. I mean, it was cool to see people and see my family and stuff, but I don't know. An online marriage ceremony. Like through Zoom or Teams or something. Teams, again, it's kind of silly, but through like Zoom or through something like completely independent. Like your own, are you doing like your own standalone like video and audio conferencing stuff, or are you using like some other, or using a provider for that, for like backhaul stuff? That's pretty neat. This wedding could have been an email. Perfect. Trying to leverage Teams for a county government. Interesting. Skype weddings. Yeah. The government part of marriage would be a lot easier. This is so true. My mom used to work at a registrar's office. She's a paralegal. She used to work at a registrar's office, like where you go to get a marriage license, at least where we were. And she had stories that people would come in trying to get marriage licenses, and it was just like, here's a list of things that we're gonna do to make this difficult for you to get your license, your marriage license. And of course, people would come in and get all upset about it. But that's cool that you're going to use Teams, because we actually have another Teams project that we're going to start probably after this one. Because there's some new APIs that came out with Teams at Build, we can do meeting apps, and we can get access to raw audio feeds. So my sort of grand plan of building a Teams app that puts word quotas on meetings is, I'm going to build that now, which I'm extremely excited about. Because imagine if we can either rate limit somebody, like, oh, you're talking too fast, or, okay, you've hit your 1,000 word quota, meeting over, see everybody. I think it'd be great. DT in the cloud says the thought of getting married again is slightly less terrifying than the thought of being single in today. And that's true. I'm 36. I've been married for, I don't know how long now, 11 years? I got married a little young, I guess. And my wife and I were watching a TV show the other night, and they're like people dating. And I was like, oh my God, the thought of like having to go out on a date again. Like, I better be nice to her. Because the thought of having to like be single again, especially like, it just sounds like it'd be miserable. Maybe it's not, but like as an adult, like especially as a grown large adult trying to like do online dating and stuff now, I don't know, it just seems like I don't think I'd be very good at it. I wasn't very good at dating in the first place. I seriously don't think I'd be any good at it now. Okay, the one other field of data that we were interested in, that I was thinking about anyway, was the owner. Because, of course, we need to know who are we going to notify. Because we're going to have app owners, hopefully, and then we'll have to fall back to somebody else to notify, like global administrators or whatever. So there should be an owner field somewhere in here. That's a good idea, Godik. Blend in a meter of how important the stuff is that's currently being talked about. And when it goes below a threshold, just tune it out. Play some music. You know, the thing I was thinking, I've been remote most of my career at Microsoft. My whole team is on West Coast, and I'm on the East Coast. And my team's good because my boss is in LA and Christos is in Redmond, and so we're all kind of remote in a way. But broader teams, a lot of people are still trying to figure out what to do, right, for remote workers. And, sometimes folks who aren't like really confident to like stand up and like go off mute and start talking, or like sort of elbow their way in, because sometimes that's how it feels. Giving like, imagine if you could put statistics around that, not for your manager, for other people, but for you to say like, hey, you don't talk much in these meetings. Maybe you should cancel them. Maybe you should just not go to them anymore. Like, I'm very much a not go if I'm not going to be useful kind of a meeting attendee. So you can say like, these are the people that, these people talk at you the most, or you're the person who talks the most in these kinds of situations or around these types of topics. Like, all sorts of cool stuff you could do. And then we get to like just a giant, we could even have it pop up and say, after like 10 or 15 minutes, if the meeting isn't very productive, just have a big message that says, this meeting could have been an email, and it shuts it down. Dead. I think it'd be pretty fun. So we're going to start working on that after we finish the secret rotator, so probably in a couple weeks. And I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to get our graph folks to come on and help me get started with graph dev, or with Teams dev. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. Yeah, that's exactly it. Godic this is already like the My Analytics, or what, it has a new name, Viva. Is that what's called now? Viva Analytics. It's basically that, just for Teams instead. So, in fact, okay, I'm sorry, I keep on getting distracted. So many cool things. Fuel Snabble just said, in a large org, would love to be able to search for who talks about Kubernetes. Now, there was a thing at Microsoft a very long time ago called Ask an Expert. And it was a plugin for LCS, live communication server. Like Teams before it was Link, or before it was Skype for Business, then Link, and then LCS and RCS. It was like live communication server, like 400 years ago, right? And there was this add-in called Ask an Expert. And what you did was you essentially would ping a bot and say, I need help with .NET memory management, whatever. And then it would go out and ping a bunch of different experts, people who were either self-proclaimed or known experts, to say, hey, this person has this question. Can you help them? And it was, all across the company. And people could register, say, yeah, I'm an expert in blah, or I'm an expert in this, I'm an expert in that. And it had all sorts of cool little, entity extraction stuff and whatever, which was really cool back then, because this was 10, 12 years ago. To figure out what the topic was, and then figure out which experts it should route it to. So, like, that'd be cool to be to do something really similar. To be, I'm an expert in blah, and have that be but like, not just because you say you're an expert in blah, because I'm sure that especially for the folks who work in tech, there are many people who are self-proclaimed experts, and generally the self-proclaimed experts are the ones that are the least expertish, I guess. That's the word. So, like, you could probably, I imagine there's a way that you could do some sort of like, I don't want to call it confidential, but a way to do like private modeling of the data to find experts, and to really have a better signal as to what is an expert. You know what I mean? Sort of like what Godic is saying, like, use intelligence systems to find the experts. Process what people are working on, and then kind of say, we think you might be an expert in something like this, or we think this is a topic that, lots of people come to you about this topic, or you get a lot of asks, or you get a lot of questions about this topic, or you write a lot of emails about these kinds of topics. Is this something, A, is it something you're interested in, and B, is it something you're interested in helping other people with? I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool. Imagine too, like, I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of times I get invited to a meeting, and there might be 4, 5, 6, 20, whatever people on the meeting, and you don't know who anybody is. And so then everybody spends like the first 15 minutes of a 25-minute meeting introducing themselves. And you're like, well, like, what if I could just hover over your name and it tells me like the stuff that you're interested in, or the stuff that you're known for, the stuff that you work on, even like that. Even that would be enough, right? But I think that makes too much sense. I mean, who's an expert on cheating? I mean, I think you definitely have to have some guardrails. Like, you'd have to use like enterprise metadata, some sort of like enterprise like data store to say these are the things that matter. But, you know, I actually think there'd be kind of an interesting office dynamic if you had things like who's an expert on cheating. I mean, it's very sort of chaotic good at the end of the day, but you know, I don't know. Surly Dev says, I once worked at a contract with this guy, fresh out of university, was constantly talking. He was always trying to show off he knew his stuff and how bright he was. It's been 40% of the day just talking. I understand that at a very deep level. I have certainly worked with folks like that before. And in fact, it's hard even doing this sometimes, because sometimes I feel like all I do is talk into a void. Which kind of makes it a little bit strange. Like, streaming's kind of a strange thing when you think about it. Like, I think it'd be cool to have like all of you come in and we can all like talk like like a water cooler kind of thing. Like, I think that'd be kind of cool. But instead, because I guess we can't really do that. You know, I don't know. And then, yeah, Avogadro says might help people with imposter syndrome, right? People who feel like they don't know what they're doing, don't know what they're talking about. You know, when people identify you as an expert, that's an enforcing thing. In fact, we were talking about this yesterday. I think a lot of folks are obviously like, we work because we got to pay bills and we need money and all that sort of stuff. And whatever your motivation is for working, I think a lot of people, maybe not everybody, but I think for a lot of people, recognition goes a long way. Recognizing somebody to say, you did a great job on this, or this was really impressive, or I really appreciate the work that you're doing, or, you know, the thing that you did here was really helpful to me or to this person or to this group of people. I think like that kind of just recognition, especially recognition among like your peers, recognition among like your management, or, you know, the people in your work group. I think that's really helpful for a lot of people, right? Like, that needs to be sort of like a part of how you talk to people on a regular basis, right? Is let's champion the work that we're doing, and let's talk about the stuff that didn't work too, and not talk about it in a way of you messed this up, but, you know, what can we all learn from this as a group? How do we take what happened here and turn it into something that we've all learned from? And I think, like, honestly, I'll be honest, I think that takes a lot of management cojones, I guess, to do that. Especially like in broader and bigger orgs and higher up the chain, like having people offer recognition and appreciation for the work that folks do, I think is, you know, like, obviously nobody's going to turn down a big chunk of extra money. Like, oh, here's a bonus for doing something great. Like, that's sure, why not? But I think people being recognized for that work, especially depending on the work and depending on the amount of bonus, might be even better than getting a bonus. I mean, I'll be honest, like, a bonus that I get privately is cool, but it's sort of like, if we were to do something like really, really cool and amazing, you know, I'd want my management to show us how much they appreciate it and that it's cool and that they think that it's neat enough or cool enough or impactful enough to share with other people that we work with. I think that goes a long way. I think it goes a long way towards helping people feel more confident in their own abilities and to find other people who might be interested in the stuff that they are too, and they just didn't know. There's a guy here who runs he runs sort of like a water cooler, kind of a really casual thing where every couple of weeks people get together and they just kind of talk about the stuff they're working on, and that's a cool thing. You you meet new people, you find new stuff, and you get some external validation. I think that's hard too. Is if you go to work every day and you're plugging away on this sort of stuff. For me, at least, it was really hard for me to recognize, like, hey, maybe I'm a moderately acceptable programmer. And I did some work externally and got paid, and we got patents and stuff on it, and that was really cool. And that was a big, like, wow, okay, like maybe there is something here. So it's I don't know. I think there's so much more. Like, you give somebody some purpose, you give them something to work towards. I think that is just as valuable as making sure people are compensated appropriately and everything else. Oh, there's a bunch of words in here. Surly Dev says he's not sure his chatty coworker ever got any actual work done. And then Surly Dev mentioned too, a conference badge you would program with your interests, and when you came within range of somebody with an overlapping interest, it would vibrate and introduce you. Now, that's super awesome. It's like going to Outback and they give you the buzzer. Everybody's just walking around buzzing. I think that'd be pretty awesome. So yeah, and failure is absolutely a great teacher. I think that there's like what is it, like the flow, like that whole concept of flow, where the work has to be challenging, but not so challenging that it's like completely frustrating and you give up, but not so easy that it's boring. And so when you hit that nice middle ground where it's challenging enough that it's not boring, that's when you get into the flow, and that's when people start to produce their best stuff, right? So the Outback buzzer, the thing, like, you walk in, Outback or any of those kind of style restaurants, you walk in, they give you a little plate, little plastic circle thing, and they take your name, and when the food's ready or when your table's ready, it like bzz, 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 it starts vibrating and stuff. I don't know. At least they had them here. So Rocket Man says they used to take staff to big movie openings. That'd be cool. We did that once at a place I used to work, because there's a movie theater that had it was a restaurant movie theater. So you walk in and there's a bar, and you sit, like, there's like a row of chairs, and then there's like a bar type thing sitting there. And so, like, as the movie's playing, they come out and take your order, and they bring you food, so you can eat like cheeseburgers and chicken and wings and all sorts of fun stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Okay, let me go find this owner. So anyway, yeah, all right. So I guess back to the work. I guess the work. What fields do we want to capture? So we definitely need the app ID, the object ID. We definitely need the app ID. That's going to be useful. Create a date time. That might be a good one for us to pick up, because we can see how old they are. An app registration owner is not necessarily the person who creates it. They don't have to be the same person. The app reg owner gets certain permissions. They can make certain changes to the app registration that other folks can't if it's locked down. By default, your default directory configuration, they're all going to be the same. So, like, you won't be restricted if you're not the owner from doing certain things. But if you're in a lockdown environment where certain permissions have been removed, like you can't register apps or whatever, the app owner or the app registration owner is conferred certain rights to be able to go and do that. So, oh, what is Graph? Yeah. We can talk about what Graph is, Surly Dev. Graph is the primary API for all Microsoft Cloud stuff. No, it's all good. Graph is the primary API for all the Microsoft Cloud, except for Azure. And except for Dynamics. So, well, no, I'm just kind of halfway kidding. All of your stuff in Office 365, your email, your calendar, your tasks, your Teams, your Delve, all that stuff, if you want to get to any of that, you get to it through Graph. So instead of having to go to like the Exchange API and to the Teams API and to the Azure AD API and all these different APIs, Graph is the primary API surface for all that stuff, which in a lot of ways I think it makes building stuff with Office 365 a whole lot easier because you don't have to have like 3 different authentication contexts and different APIs with different SDKs and all that silliness and different schemas. So so that's what it is. I think Christos is done. He's pinging me. Let me tell him. I guess I need to tell him where we are. Let me ping him and tell him so he can come and join. So yes, that's the owner. And I mean, Graph is a super cool API. Like we've got, you'll notice over here we got things like getting started. There are a bunch of sample queries for stuff like apps, compliance, like groups, identity and access, teams, like all the teams. Teams doesn't even have an API except for Graph. Like that is it. To do, OneDrive, like SharePoint. You want to get data out of SharePoint instead of having to use SharePoint CSOM and all the old SharePoint APIs. You can get through Graph now for not everything, but for a lot of stuff, user stuff, all sorts of good things. So we're going to use Graph. In fact, we're going to use Graph. Not only are we going to use Graph to find the apps, we're also going to use Graph to send the emails to the owners to say, hey, your secrets are about to expire. Okay. So on the user or on the application object, let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and turn Christos' stuff on because he's probably going to show up here in a minute. Oh, look, he's already there. I don't think he can hear us, though. Are you there, Christos? Can you hear us? Christos, it's me, JP. Can you hear me? Oh, man, it's funny. I can't hear you. Are you there, Christos? It's me, JP. I can't hear you. But that might be a me problem, not a you problem. I can't hear you, but... Oh, I can't hear you because I'm not in the app that I'm supposed to hear you in. So, of course I'm not going to be able to hear you. So, let me open it, and then I'll be able to hear you. That's a me problem. I haven't done OBS in so long, I'd kind of forgotten, you know what I mean? So, yeah. Can you hear me, though, Christos? Because I don't think you can, right? Oh, you can? Well, okay. So you're going to hear everything I say a few minutes later? Yeah, pretty much. Okay. You can hear me now? Okay, good. Okay, well, good. Hey, so how was your show?
It was fun.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What'd you talk about?
Player 2 has entered the room. What did I talk about at the conference? Did I talk about identity?
I have a suspicion.
You got a green screen. Yeah, it was identity, man. We talked about introduction to developers. Introduction to identity for developers. It was fun.
That's cool. Well, good. It was the M365 Chicago, yeah?
It was, yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which was weird. Like I was talking, it's almost like talking internally about identity, you know? These people know Microsoft 365, so it's bread and butter for them, but giving them a developer's approach to identity is always interesting. What have you guys been up to? What did I miss?
Well, we've been talking a lot. I haven't actually written a whole lot of code, but you know, that's because we've been talking about different things. Secrets.
Secrets. You haven't done certificates yet.
No, I didn't do that. I just mentioned it.
Now the show can really start. You're absolutely right, Avogadro.
Yep.
Hey, you do know that JP is the bomb, right? So I'm just here to play along. What? There's a theme? What? Did you say there's a theme on the Graph Explorer?
Apparently so.
What?
Yeah, pretty cool. It kind of has a high contrast vibe though, even though I didn't pick high contrast.
I am mind blown now.
Right, yeah, I'm
okay.
not. Anyway, I'm gonna put it back to likes. It looks pretty awful. Anyway, I'm trying to find the. We're trying to figure out the fields we want to store.
Ah, okay. For
So, for the apps, because sadly, all of the things that I tried
Okay.
for storing the. All the ways that I tried to figure out deltas or to query graph or to get deltas out of graph for this, none of them work.
Well, tell me what you're trying to do. Are you trying to change the credentials?
No, I'm trying to know when the credentials are going to expire so that we can notify people to say, hey, your credential's about to expire. Updating the credential we can do later, but I just need to tell people that they're going to do that.
Well,
And sadly,
if you go into application, then there's a credential field in there. Does it not have a date?
oh no, they have dates.
Okay. Oh, you want to get triggered by that?
Yeah, there's no way to do that.
No. I
Delta
think you
Delta
need to-
query, Delta query
Yeah.
doesn't work. Webhooks don't work.
Nope.
So
So you actually
We're
need
gonna-
to run it every day and see if it's near the expiration date, and then mark that for update.
yeah, which sucks because like in a tenant like ours, which has like 2 million service principals.
You get paid results, right? So it will be a while before you get all the information. Man, I'm losing my hair up there. I need to go. Should I go number one all over? What do you guys think?
What does that mean?
Number one.
No,
is
don't
like,
do that.
Why not? I mean, look at that. Look up here, man. I know it's vanity, but there's
Well, what does
nothing
that mean? What do you mean go number one everywhere? Because
Like-
keep in mind, I have little kids who tell me that all the time, and I'm like, please don't do that.
Why? What's wrong?
What do you when you say number one? What do you mean?
Number one, as in taking the clippers and just going number one all over your head.
Oh, got it.
Blade side.
Got
Yeah, we're
it.
going all. What? Oh, honestly, did you think that was the other?
I had
The
no idea
other
what
one?
you're. I had no idea what you're talking about.
We're talking about hair.
No idea.
How does hair relate to pee?
Well, to be honest, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't. I wasn't really listening, and then you said I'm going to go number one everywhere, and I was like, "What the hell's this guy on about?"
On
got a
stage,
little-
I'm going to go number one all over. Dude, come on.
I
Let's
was like,
keep
I didn't know it was that
PG.
kind of. Didn't know it was that kind of a conference, you know. Like, I mean, no judgment. I'm just saying.
I think the audience will automatically change to a very different audience if we're to go down that route. Oh, God. I thought that first too. Well, Rocketman said he had the same kind of thinking as you. Get your
See?
mind out of the gutter. Exactly. Thank you,
It's not,
Didi.
like, it's not in the gutter.
No,
Anyway.
for the kids. The conversation about number one, number two is a real thing, especially for younger kids. So I totally relate to you. Ours are off that phase, so we forgot about them.
So anyway,
Anyway.
so I gotta. Oops. So we're gonna store some data about our. We're gonna store some data about our applications so that I can scan that for expiring secrets and just do a
Yep.
poll once a day or once a month or once a week or whatever. We can set up our poll, and there's some other things we can maybe do with our deltas. We can at least get notified when new apps are created, but we can't get notified when apps are updated, which is the part that sucks. So my thought was we store or persist a ton of the app data itself in storage, and we'll just go scan that as sort of as a cache in a way. We'll just store that. And
Are you gonna use the date as your key so we can be efficient in the
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I hadn't decided my key because I was thinking about what the query patterns are going to be. On the one side, it would be what is about to expire, so date would be a good one. On the other hand, if we have to pull, if we get to the point in the future where we have updates,
Yep.
or where we actually get delta or whatever, that would be useful too. So I don't know. I haven't determined my key right now. I'm just trying to figure out what data fields we want to store.
Okay.
And we'll swing back around for the key.
While you do that, hi Sahil, how you doing, buddy?
It's also, of course, they're also one to many, right? So we've got
Or you can have multiple secrets for one account, right?
one app might have multiple key credentials and might have multiple password credentials, and each one of those is going to expire at a certain time.
Did you know that you can only store 2 secrets per app through the REST API?
What?
Yeah. If you
What are
try
you talking
to
about?
if you try to programmatically create credentials, you can only have 2 client secrets. If you try to do a third one, the API bombs out with maximum certificates created. It's weird.
Wait, certificates or passwords?
Sorry, password, secrets.
It does?
Yeah.
I can't say I've ever seen that.
I came across the other day when I was doing it through the Dota Interactive.
Especially because I've got like 6 secrets on a single app right now.
Yeah, in the UI you can do. Anyway, so that's side note. I don't know if you store everything, says Godek.
Yeah, store everything. That way we don't miss out. That's true. It is an option.
Just take the whole graph object, just dump it into. You know what? You can do that. It's it's non-hierarchical database or non-relational. Just dump.
Hey,
the
Nepto. Hey, Nepto Craft. Sorry.
Yes. Why not? Your mic gain is lower than JP. Yeah, he keeps me on the low, because I'm extremely loud apparently.
I haven't done anything to your audio. I'll check though. Here, let me turn it up a little bit. Try now.
It's JSON, so it's storable. Exactly, Godek. Let's store the whole thing.
I'm not going to store the whole thing. It's incredibly inefficient.
I'm just messing with you.
Not to mention, the scheme is going to change. The scheme has already changed multiple times. It's going to change again.
Yes.
So, I want ID, I want app ID, I want key credential collection, I want password credential collection, I want...
What else do we need? Date.
Display name.
Name? No date?
Well, the date, here's the problem with graph. The date is in the key credential object, right?
Correct. Yep.
And the
query.
And the key credentials object, sorry, it's key credentials, not credential. It's a complex type, so. And we can't filter on it. Now, I have not tried to do a select on it, but I'm not super confident that it would work. If we were to do like password credentials any and then did like end date, oops. If I was to try like end date time and key ID maybe, I don't think that's gonna work, but we'll try. Yeah, I don't.
It's not valid.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I mean,
yeah.
So that means that you have to do a subsequent query after you get the app IDs.
No, we don't have to do a subsequent query. We can get them. It's just that it's an array, and that we can't really filter it. We can't filter this array with a select.
May want to store the items that are in the app settings.json during deploy for use in multiple customers. Is that for the function? I suspect so. Rocketman says that. I think that's for the function. Yeah. Well, oh, you mean the items, as in the query items? I'm confused.
Well, really, I guess the thing we're actually interested in storing is less about the application and more about the credentials themselves, right?
Can you? Yeah, you can actually update the credentials without needing the app ID, right? There you go.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, I think you can update just the credential secret. What's the object again? Just by ID, right? So you don't have to have the full app object or details about the app ID or the app.
Well, we can definitely pull it on its own, but I think sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean?
As in, you don't need the full app object. All you need is the client key and the the ID of the client secret. Sorry, goddamn, what is the object name?
I don't know.
Credential, what is it called? Oh, password credential. So you can actually query directly the password credential. You don't have to go through the application. If you have the ID, you can do it. So you just need to store that.
Okay, so what was there a key credentials object that hangs off of this then? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
There's a password credentials object that hangs off of V1.
I think so.
I've never seen that before.
Okay. Let me see. Let me see.
I mean, we'll need the object ID for that. We'll have
Correct.
to. I mean, unless there's like
yeah,
a credentials object, but I've never seen that. It would have to be applications.
Yeah, let me see. I'll while you do that, I'll query the graph because I was doing it the other day. There you go. There's a resource type for that.
Resource type for what?
For key credential. It's called.
But the resource, what path does that resource type hang off of?
Yeah, give me a second. The password. Interesting. So it will be. Oh, it's off application. Sorry, I'm being a daft. Remove add. Remove key. Yeah, it's hanging off the applications.
Yeah. So what we need on the app on the credential objects themselves, we will need. We'll probably want the probably want the display name.
And you know why you want the display name? Because I don't think you can patch. You have to either remove or add. There's no patching.
You do.
You do? There's patching?
No. You have to create credentials.
Yeah, so that means that you need to have the name so it stays consistent. Although it's not referenced by your app, right? So your app doesn't really.
No, they're just.
Your
it's essentially just a list of. It's just essentially a list of passwords.
Yeah.
So let's see. We'll get the key ID for sure. We'll need that.
But I suspect that if the name is important to admins that look into the key credential, let's say you have a key or a client credential for one web app and they have another client credential for another web app, you may want to differentiate between the two and where they're used. We usually put non-meaningful names there, but people may actually use the names, so you need it.
So we have the start date time of when it's valid and when it is not, and we can use date times in table storage, which is cool. And then for the key, I guess we'll need the parent app ID too. So we'll store the parent app ID. I guess we could duplicate and store we could just store the app's display name, just for the ease of
for Yes.
Instead of creating a separate entity, because that's going to be that'll be kind of a mess. So
yep,
we'll just do parent. Oops. Parent app display name. All right. And then for key credentials, we have a little bit of a difference. We still need the display name, and then interesting. So we also have a type. We have a type and a usage on. We have a type and a usage we need to store too, but those are going to be for certificate entities. But let's see, we'll do a type, and we'll do a usage. This should normally be always verify, but oops, whatever. We'll store it just in case. So our credential entity. So now we've got to derive a key. So what key would make the most sense for this? Because we're going to query. I mean, this is purely outbound notifications and changes, right?
Yep.
So we're going to query and say, hey, this secret is about to expire, or these secrets are about to expire.
Yes. What do we do next? Why? Why are you stuck? What's the problem?
I'm not stuck. I'm just thinking.
Okay. How can I help in that thinking process?
Well, so if we have a date as our key, we'd have like a round date, right? Down to like a day window or something. Essentially, what's going to expire today? We can also do like what's going to expire in 3 days. I mean, your secret expires in 5 minutes is probably not a use case somebody's going to want to be in, right?
Yep.
So, what would our partition key be? I guess we'd partition on date.
Yeah, I think that would be the perfect one. And then you probably want to partition, then short date, not daytime. Yeah, it should be date, not daytime. That's a good point. Yeah, you don't need daytime, JP.
I'm getting a date time from Graph, so I'm just passing it through.
Oh, yeah, for ease of use.
I'm also not entirely sure if table storage supports just the date type.
Ooh, does it need to be UTC time?
Well, yeah, these are all UTC from Graph. So I guess what we could do is we could do milliseconds or seconds since epoch. That's a pretty common one.
But then again, you won't have a consistent key. You won't say, hey, show me all the keys that are expiring tomorrow. That'll be a messy query.
Well, no, that's what I was saying. We have to round out to a day.
Oh, so you're gonna store that as an integer, but it will be rounded up to the day. I see.
Yeah. So essentially, like if we take, because I don't know if we really need seconds, but like seconds since epoch, right? Granted, when does epoch become a 32-bit overflow? Was it 2030 something? I don't remember. So essentially, we would take this like so this is current Unix epoch or epoch time, right? So we would pretty much take this, right, and we would round this out. We just zero these out to get it to the nearest day, or 10-minute window, or 5-minute window, or whatever. We'll just do it to a 24-hour window.
I would say 24-hour window.
And that way we see what is expiring today.
Yep.
So we know at a day's granularity what's about to expire.
Yes.
So, excuse me. So, the thing I never remember is, are we in milliseconds or are we in seconds? An epoch. This is seconds, right? So if we wanted to round this to the day, God, I haven't done this in a long time. So if I want to round seconds to a day, how many zeros is that? Like, so how do I get to what's essentially 12 o'clock GMT? So for the second epoch, that's, I guess what we'll do is we'll take the time that we get from
round it up to the date and then convert it to an epoch rather than having to do the conversion in epoch.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, that'll probably be easier. At least what we'll do. I got to go here in a couple minutes anyway, but so we'll use that for our partition key, right? So our partition key And then our row ID or our row key. I guess for row key, we can probably just use... We probably just use app ID for our row key. Because then if we end up with a place where you've got multiple secrets expiring on the same day, I mean, it doesn't really matter because we're going to pull the whole partition every time anyway.
Exactly.
So it probably doesn't really matter. So, so let's see. I'm trying to think of what we need to do here. Let's see. Convert to... So epoch is
integer, right?
1970. The 1 1 1 1. Okay. And I guess we should we do a, what is it, a date time span or date time offset, and then we'll just set it to. So we got our date time offset. And we'll set that to time type of UTC.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, then I think I have to put everything in here. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. I don't know what the calendar is. I hate
Gregorian or whatever the other one is.
I hate.
Is there an enum? Calendar dot.
Doesn't look like it.
Check the daytime offset.
I hate dealing with dates. Okay. I'll tell you what we'll do.
I
think I can do a date time with a date time kind, right? So we'll do 1970, 1, 1. We don't need a time because we need midnight anyway.
Yep.
And then, so there's calendar, then hour, minute, second. Then there, date time kind. That's what I'm looking for, but it looks like I may still need... I think I probably still have to do the rest of the time. So 0, 0, 0, 0. And date time kind is UTC. Okay. So we've got epoch, and then we're going to have a time that comes in. And so the time that comes in will be the end time. I'm just going to use a new one for the moment, just for the sake of testing this out. So when we get our date time, we're going to round the date to essentially round back, right? We're going to round counterclockwise back to midnight for that day.
Correct.
Yeah. So how can we remove? How can I just strip the time?
Why are you doing new daytime there? Just to play around with?
Yeah. Isn't there a, there's a good REPL somewhere in there?
You want to do, so you want to convert the end date to an epoch?
No, I want to round the date. I want to round the end date to midnight, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then calculate seconds since epoch off of that.
Yeah, I would say create a new date with the current date, month, year, and day. Sorry, month, year, month, year, day. And ignore everything else. So that should reset it to, or it says daytime.date will bring back the current day. Oh, that's a good point. Daytime.date will give you the current date without any times or anything else you don't. CM, you're low. Am I sitting low or is my sound low? That's all JP. Never mind. What do you mean? What do you mean never mind? If my sound is no good. It's an instance property. It says codec.
It's an instance of date time. Yeah, that's fine. So what I'll end up doing then, so we'll take the date, and then it just ends up being now minus epoch, essentially to seconds, right?
But you have to convert it to an same to same, right? Will that work?
Well, it's still a date time. It's just that it's a zeroed out. Yeah,
yes.
Set to midnight. So it's still a date time. So I will can I subtract them? I guess I can't. I don't know if. Oh, God, it's been so long, man. I don't remember how to do any of this stuff. So I've got the date, and then I can subtract epoch. I don't think I can.
But do you not want to do all the calculations in dates, and then just do the epoch at the very end? Oh, sorry, you're saying epoch, but it's actually a date. Sorry, ignore my. I need more coffee this morning.
Yeah, I don't. I just hate working with dates because my brain never works this way. So that would be total seconds, right? Essentially.
Yep. So are you going to compare the total seconds to the... What are you going to do now? I'm confused.
So I'm going to store this.
You're going to store that, but then how are you going to query it?
What do you mean, how am I going to query it? I'm going to go get...
You're going to convert the epoch to date? Is that what you're going to do? From seconds, more or less?
Wait a minute. Say that again? I don't understand. What are you asking? Oh, so I have... So when we pull these things out of graph, we're going to take the date time that we get, right? So I'll put this in. Date time, end date from graph.
Yep.
Right? So the end date from graph is going to have a date field on it. We're going to, which is essentially just the midnighted out. It's just a date, right?
Yep.
And remove epoch from that, or subtract epoch from that. Now, how the date math works, because it's literally just minus. Well, we might care. We might care if it doesn't do what we think it's going to do. So if we subtract epoch from the end date from graph, that should give us the total number of seconds between midnight on the day of our secrets expiring and 1970 midnight, which presumably, since they're all midnight, it's going to give it essentially gives us a derivable key.
Yep.
Because if I've got 5 secrets expiring on this day, then I should have 5 with the same primary key or with the same partition key.
Yep.
Which all matches. So each day, what we would do is derive today's key and go pull them out. To essentially do the same math on each day's.
Yes.
For each time the function runs, let the function go and do its own. Instead of it being the end.
I agree. We need to unit test that to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, we will.
We will.
I don't know if we'll do it. Yeah.
We don't have any time for unit tests. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So that's the net. So this will ultimately be. This is ultimately the partition key.
Yep.
So when we create new ones of these, we have to have an empty constructor for table storage SDK to work. As we get these from, so we're going to pull all of these out, and really we'll end up, because instead of we're not going to query these now, we're just going to store all of them and we'll query them later. Yeah, so we'll have to we'll do our manipulation here.
Yep.
And we're going to end up where we've got app objects that have many key objects on them, and we want to pivot that. We want to pivot that out because we're going to have one key for each one.
Correct.
Or we're going to have many keys for each app ID, even though we're going to get back app objects. So that would be, let's see, expiring secrets select. It might be, is this select mini? And then we would get our key credentials, our password credentials. Where's that? Let's see. Into a new. So we get our key credentials. We would get our password credentials.
App ID.
Well, no, because I don't want an array, right? an array of credentials stored in this object, in this anonymous object. I want each credential to be part of the array.
A separate
right?
row. Yep.
Yep. So we'll have to select key credentials, but we also have password credentials, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna have to select out. We're gonna have to select out both of those. It's like the link to Objects Olympics to figure out the best way to do that. So I want to select the key credentials.
So Caparino is asking why we're not using a random primary key, because storage is very inefficient if you don't have a good partition key there for querying. Therefore, we want to be able to say, get me all the keys for that date, and it will be extremely fast. We doesn't have to do a full scan of the table. That's why we're not going with a random primary key, or partition key, sorry. Hope that makes sense. As good as table storage is, it can be extremely inefficient if you screw up your partitioning.
So really, yeah, I guess I don't really want to select many. Well, yeah, we do. So I can get key credentials off of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our result selector. Oh, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit. So our key, I'm gonna be inefficient, and then we'll figure it out afterward. So what we'll select off of
It's all in memory, so you're good.
So we'll have to select many because we need the password credentials. And then no, do we still need to select many? Yeah, because I don't want to end up with a list of arrays, right? I want to essentially flatten out. I really want to flatten both of these arrays out.
You may not be able to do with a link. You may have to do a for loop there. JP.
I heard you.
So you have to go for each application that you get. You want to do for each secret or for each key and create a new object, and eventually you'll have the flattened structure. I mean, you might be able to do it with link, but I haven't done it with link, so I may be. I will go with the dummy approach. So for each expiring secrets, so for each var application, it's a dynamic object. So for each item in expiring secrets,
it's an array of applications right now. It's an array of application objects out of Graph
which
SDK
also
right
contains arrays of key credentials and password credentials, right? Yeah, I will say start with a for loop, and then you can do the link expression later. Make it easy. Don't make it too hard on yourself.
I'm not making it too hard on myself. I'm just thinking. That's all. But it doesn't matter anyway because I have to go. Because I have to go to the doctor. So for each var app in expiring secrets, let's see.
Then you have to do another loop there.
I got it, man. I got it. Just give me a minute, please.
Okay. Passenger side coding.
Yeah. So I guess I could do this, but I don't really like that. But
What do you already have?
Oh.
Why are you adding it again?
I'm sorry. I'm adding them to a new. I'm essentially adding them to a new array. Like essentially go through each app and pick out the key credentials and stuff them all into a brand new array.
Would you not need to create a new table entity there?
We'll get there.
Okay.
I'm just trying to flatten it to start, right?
Yeah, so 2 for loops, man. One for iterating through every app, and then one for inside that for loop you would be iterating over the key credentials and flattening them out, storing them somewhere.
Yeah, I got it. I know. I'm saying I'm trying to flatten the credentials in total, right? Because rather than storing key credentials and password credentials separately, we just store them as the common fields between them are the same, right?
Yep.
So at the moment, I'm just trying to flatten them out, and then we'll take them and transform them into our other object, into our table entity. Yeah.
Cool.
So. But we're still stuck with this key credential object, and of course, key credential and password credential are different. I wonder if they both derive from anything. It would look like no.
That would make too much sense.
Yeah, it'd be way too easy. So we've got our list of password credential. I guess if we're going to iterate through the collection, we'll just do them in both, right? So we've got these 2 arrays, and then essentially we're just going to join them together. And then from here, we'll take these and essentially figure out what we need from each one of them, right? So here is where we can do a new, what did we call it? What did we call our object? Credential entity?
I think so.
And here we'll just, I guess here we'll just map them all together and get them into our credential entities, and then we'll go store them. So, let's see. So we've got our display name, which is our display name. We've got our end date time, which is our end date time. We have our parent app display name. We are going to need the app, though. We're going to need that app object here.
That's why I said you probably need a new object to flatten the structure. What is the, show me the table entity again. Why do you not just create the table entity straight away from here? What does it have? It has key ID, display name. Yeah, so inside the for loop, the first thing I would do is new credential entity with display name as the app name. Or parent app ID would be the app ID. Parent app display name would be the parent name. Yeah, anyway, probably I'm thinking it in a different way than you are right now.
All right, well, I gotta go. So I guess we'll do this again on Tuesday.
Yeah, checking the code. Yeah, we'll do it on Tuesday. Absolutely. This is a long-term project to help other people, so why not?
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I guess we'll be back on Tuesday. We'll try to wrap a little bit more of this up.
Cool. So we're we got Clark.io. He's out there. Ed Samberno is there. Rockstar is there. Which one do you want to read?
I guess we'll go to Clark.
Let's go to Clark. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the weather if it's nice over there. Do something fun. We'll see you all back here on Tuesday.
Yeah. See you on Tuesday.
Take it easy.